Okay. What's up? If you're watching this video right now, you are watching from my YouTube channel. What we do here is we talk about the occult, we talk about spirituality, and we talk about the healing process. Jumping right into it, what we are going to be talking about today is Abaddon. Abaddon is a very powerful entity, and if you're working with this being on an individual level, you will go through some very rapid changes that at times can actually be very destructive. Abaddon's name can actually translate to destruction, doom, or even a place of destruction that's associated with the dead and with the afterlife. You can think of Abaddon as being like the spirit of destruction itself. So think about when there's some destructive event that happens in the cosmos, or there's some other kind of destruction that takes place here on Earth. Or, an asteroid hits a planet and there's like a huge cataclysm and this destructive ripple effect that takes place because of it. Abaddon is the intelligence of that destruction itself. This is the best way to understand what Abaddon actually is. So when we are working with Abaddon, we are calling upon that raw, destructive force. We are pulling that into our bodies. We are channeling that through our nervous system, and this is causing a dissolving effect to take place within the psyche. This is causing a deletion of old subconscious programs that don't serve us. And this is also initiating a rewiring of our nervous system and how our nervous system is firing. And of course, through the principle of as within, so without, there's going to be a destructive effect that takes place in our life experience. And, I've worked with Abaddon for years now, and other people that I've connected with who started working with Abaddon, they would see destruction, show up in their lives in some pretty dense, pretty heavy, and we can even say sometimes some very scary ways, because once again, Abaddon's not your typical entity that you work with. And, there's going to be shifts and there's going to be changes with any entity that you work with. But what I'm saying here is Abaddon is a lot heavier than most of the entities that you're going to hear people speaking about online, whether it's, angelic forces, demonic forces, something in between. Abaddon's a lot heavier than a lot of those beings. Once again, Abaddon is the spirit of destruction itself, and that's what's going to take place internally and externally in your life experience when you're working with Abaddon. And I'm not saying that, you're absolutely going to go through uncomfortable, very destructive experiences, but, a lot of people do, including myself. Over the years working with Abaddon, I've seen how this energy will manifest in some pretty intense ways as the natural byproduct of this destructive evolutionary momentum that I created, utilizing practices like ritual invocation and ritual evocation and things of that nature. There is a deep process of shadow integration that takes place when you work with Abaddon. Emotions like wrath, rage, anger, hatred, emotions that you feel were not safe to express in your past, will come flooding to the surface so you can learn how to have a healthy relationship with the parts of you that are carrying those emotions, so you can then reintegrate those parts rather than suppressing them. Or maybe you're a person that over-expressed those things, right? Maybe you didn't suppress it. Maybe you over-expressed it in order to avoid some type of vulnerability inside of you or something like that. I used to be that person. I used to be in the streets. I spent a lot of time behind the walls, meaning, I spent a lot of time incarcerated many selves ago. I was a very different person once upon a time. So my way of avoiding vulnerability was over-expressing those things. But a lot of people in our society today, they under-express it. They are very passive-aggressive, and this makes them more manipulative, more covert in the way they express those kinds of emotions. So, working with Abaddon brings those kinds of emotions to the surface so we can integrate the parts of us that those emotions are attached to. So in the book of Revelations, Abaddon actually shows up as an angel who possesses the keys to the bottomless pit. The bottomless pit is actually a reference to our unconscious mind, because our unconscious mind is bottomless. There's no bottom, there's no end. We are always growing into our unconscious. It doesn't matter how seriously you take your evolutionary process, you will always be becoming more conscious of your unconscious. You will always be growing into the totality of what you are, which is existing in your unconscious. And the deeper you go into the unconscious, the more of that allness, the more of that totality you learn to embody. But that totality is like never ending. It's that infinite potential that even your own higher self is actually growing into. So your higher self is also experiencing an evolutionary process through all of the other versions of it that make up its overall body of intelligence and energy. And you, as you experience yourself now, are one of those versions. But the point is even the higher self, as knowing as it is, it's not all knowing. It's still expanding, it's still growing, and it's still growing into aspects of itself that from the human perspective, we would consider it's unconscious, So I'm saying this to kind of show you how deep the unconscious actually is. Abaddon brings us into those unconscious regions. And the unconscious, once again, it never ends. So Abaddon can bring you as deeply as you're actually able to go. As much as you have the capacity to actually process is as deep as Abaddon can bring you into the unconscious. Remember, Abaddon holds the keys to the unconscious, holds the keys to the bottomless pit. That's what that reference in the book of Revelations actually means. Now, the book of Revelations is this apocalyptic scenario. There's disease, there's famine, there's plague, there's destruction. I believe there's like cataclysms and weather disasters and people dying and things of that nature. And at some point in the book of Revelations, Abaddon shows up. He has the keys to the bottomless pit. And then from this bottomless pit are these demonic locusts that get released on humanity. But not just anyone, only people who do not have the mark or the seal of God on their forehead. What this means is these forces that Abaddon controls are actually sent to create catalyst and to create a pressurizing effect on people who are not in alignment with the source energy consciousness. People that have not reconnected the circuitry of, their bodies to the divine source intelligence, or what a lot of people call God. That's what the mark of God means in the book of Revelations. So people that are not really doing the work, people that are not honoring their process, people that are not living from a space of having their mind in coherence with their heart, and their heart in coherence with their mind, and their mind in coherence with their body, well, they experience all of this really heavy pressure and catalyst that is symbolized by these demonic locusts, basically like torturing them. This may have been the exact words, but I'm not sure. But I think in Revelations it says these locusts torture them for, I believe the time period is 5 months. So not only is this very symbolic in itself of the role that Abaddon actually plays and the kinds of forces that Abaddon governs, but Abaddon showing up during the apocalypse also kind of helps us understand the deeper nature of what Abaddon actually is. Abaddon is a force of the apocalypse. And during this apocalypse in Revelations, we see a lot of death, a lot of plague, a lot of disease, and a lot of destruction. All of this is symbolic for a mass collective ego death that is being initiated. So when you're working with Abaddon, there's this inner apocalypse that is taking place. And what apocalypse translates to is an unveiling. Meaning there's going to be this level of exposure that will manifest in your life to show you how you're not being yourself, to show you how you've been living in these trauma-based projections, to show you how you've been attaching to certain identities, certain relationships, certain inner narratives, and certain parts of you to avoid vulnerability, because as a child you were probably taught that it's not okay to be vulnerable and it's not okay to feel certain emotions, and you have been lying to yourself. So Abaddon throws you into the bottomless pit of your unconscious, while simultaneously what is happening to bring you into the unconscious is a dissolving of the protective layering, a dissolving of the identities, a dissolving of the illusions, and of the aspects of the ego that are actually keeping you from fully experiencing your own unconscious. And of course, because you created a lot of your life experience from that falsehood, from those inner narratives, identities, and belief systems, well, those things are also subject to get pressurized. This means, maybe your job. This means certain relationships that you are in. These things actually go through a collapse, experience a lot of rupture, pressure, and catalyst as a result of the inner shift that working with Abaddon is triggering, in your internal world, as within, so without. As your internal world is going through this apocalypse, well, your external world or reality is also going through a major reset. This is the kind of energy that Abaddon brings to the table, and I do not recommend contacting Abaddon unless you're willing to go into the bottomless pit. Unless you're willing to go into your own inner hell dimension to actually befriend your inner demons. When we're working with Abaddon, we're not casting away our demons. We're not trying to ascend to 5D and, leave our demons in the 3D or anything like that, right? We're not trying to raise our vibration but ignore we can say the lower vibrational parts of us that we don't want to take a look at, we are directly confronting our inner demons. And when I say confront, I don't mean we're fighting against them. I mean we are accepting them. We are loving them. We are understanding why these inner demons even exist. We are going into that inner hell to actually recollect all of these fragmented aspects of ourselves that will actually go from inner demons to these, we can almost say, spirits of light, right? We start to integrate these inner demons to serve us now, instead of something that is running us unconsciously, instead of being parts of us that carry vices and addictions and all these heavy energies. Those inner demons that were carrying all that darkness actually become our light when we choose to bring them into the light of our awareness, when we choose to take ownership over them rather than, turning a blind eye or suppressing them or demonizing and acting, demonizing them and acting like they're not a part of us. We all have inner demons. We all have certain negative personality traits and ways to us. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. It's about becoming aware of it and then integrating those personality traits, integrating those ways that we have to us rather than ignoring them, integrating those inner demons and returning them to source, returning them to God, which is not just this force that's up there somewhere in the sky or in the stars, but we are God. We are the source having a physical experience. So what we do is we meet those inner demons with compassion. We meet those inner demons with acceptance rather than trying to banish them, reject them, or fight them. This is the process that working with Abaddon actually brings you into. And this is why Abaddon is associated with the Qliphoth, actually associated with multiple spheres on the Qliphothic tree. Abaddon can be associated with Satariel. Abaddon can be associated with Golachab. Abaddon can be associated with Thamael. Abaddon is very much associated with the Qliphothic abyss. Abaddon is actually a guardian of the threshold, meaning Abaddon is this force that guides you into these liminal states of consciousness, these liminal states of awareness that actually have the potential to start rewriting your inner narrative, deleting outdated programs and beliefs, actually has the potential to help you go into or to grow a totally different sense of self than you are actually used to experiencing, as that old self is being deleted by the really heavy, dense pressure that comes with working with Abaddon. Abaddon is a guardian and a gatekeeper of the abyss. So we can see that Abaddon is a very powerful entity and a very supportive guide, but also a very catalytic kind of energy to work with. Once again, like I said earlier, more catalytic than a lot of entities that you're going to read about or a lot of entities that you are going to find online, that you're going to find people speaking about. And I've seen people kind of lose themselves in madness and lose themselves in anger and lose themselves in rage working with Abaddon. Not because Abaddon wants this to happen, but if you're not prepared to actually do and to embrace, hold on real quick, excuse me, I just ate. If you're not prepared to actually embrace a deeper process, a genuine process of shadow integration, if you're not prepared to sit with those dense, heavy, negative emotions that are connected to past trauma, and rather than projecting them or attaching to them, then Abaddon is probably not the entity for you to work with. This is just the natural byproduct of working with Abaddon. After all, Abaddon's name can translate to doom, to destruction. And Abaddon holds the keys to the bottomless pit, holds the keys to your unconscious. And at times working with Abaddon can feel like you're just getting picked up and just thrown into the unconscious, you know? So, a very powerful entity to work with for sure, but definitely an entity that you want to be ready to work with. You want to be at a place within yourself to where you actually have the capacity to process the heavier energies that you may experience working with Abaddon. There's a lot of letting go that's required, because there's a lot of death energy that's going to come into your life, and this death energy is moving you into that more liminal state of awareness that I was explaining before. And because Abaddon is associated with the abyss, working with Abaddon will continually bring you into these in-between states. You will die to the old self, then you'll be in that liminal in-between space where it's like the new reality and the old reality that's in the process of still kind of deconstructing, is kind of, you know, pulling at you, right? And it can be a very uncomfortable energy to be in, and then, you know, you'll kind of emerge from that or cross that threshold, move out of that liminal space as the new self. You'll have a different relationship with your beliefs and a different relationship with relationships, and, you know, you'll start feeling very different, and then feeling a sense of renewal, feeling that rebirth after you experienced the death, and then, you know, after you experienced that liminal space between life and death that we call the abyss. And then you'll get brought back to that abyssal energy again, and you're gonna rinse, wash, and repeat over and over and over again working with Abaddon. Working with Abaddon means going through some of the deep processes of soul development that you can actually go through as a human being, and that's why it can feel so heavy. But it truly is a beautiful process, and if you're a person that's in resonance with Abaddon from what I'm sharing, and if you're a person that has a genuine intention to do the work, and a real intention to be the most authentic version of yourself that you can be, no matter what it costs you, and the only thing it's going to cost you is your old self and your old reality, well, maybe Abaddon is a being that you might consider contacting. This is what I wanted to say in this video. If you watched to the end, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you so much, and I will catch you in the next video. Thank you.